Jessica Bell from My Wine School, where it is wine your way. And everyone say hello to my sister, Karen Bell, our resident chef, and as I always say, fab sister. She's in the room tonight. And Karen, we're on our second week of Spanish wines.
I know. I have to say I'm a little disappointed I don't have a plate of tapas in front of me.
There is no plate of pork in front of her because I could not get her to focus last week. I kept looking over, and instead of looking at the computer screen or the wine,
she was starting a new tradition.
She was just checking out the food. So there is no pork in the house tonight. And if you want to say hello to Karen, I see everyone chatting in already. It's real easy to be a part of the conversation. If you're watching this live, off to the right, you'll see an opportunity to chat with us. Go ahead and type something in under audience. It'll take you to this screen. You can either log in or sign up. And if you choose to sign up today, you fill in 5 fields and boom, you are a part of the conversation. So here we are at WineCAST number 31. And this is our Wine Explorer level. So eventually we're going to be rolling out 3 levels again. But for now, we're going to be doing 1 a week. And like I always say, if you're having a good time tonight, invite your friends over next week to share that bottle of wine you have with you. And talking about wines, I see a lot of different wines out there, which is great. There are wines that we suggest, but at the end of the day, we just want you drinking some wine. So I saw the Gran Reserva Crianza, Marques de Crianza. I also saw a wine, which was Pedro Martinez Alisanco. I've visited that winery before, so that brought back a lot of good memories. What we're doing tonight is Spanish aging terms. And specifically, we're going to be doing the Marques de Caceres Crianza from 2007, and it's the Rioja. Now, that's a lot to take in right away, but don't worry, we're going to go through what all that means little by little. So this is a wine that you can find really all over the place, and there's a good reason for it. We're going to tell you why. I've got plenty of stories for you tonight, and this wine changed the face of modern winemaking in Spain. So if that's not a hook for you to stick around, I don't know what is. So hopefully you're going to enjoy what we've got to talk about tonight. Karen, have you had this wine before?
Yeah, I have.
Well, so just for those of you who don't know, Karen owned a restaurant in Spain, so she was buying her wines in Spain. Did you ever see this wine? Was this available to you in Spain?
Yeah, it was. It's readily available. I think it's one of the, I always thought of it as a classic, but I think I didn't really drink it too much actually until I came back to the States. I didn't drink it as much in Spain, and I said to you before, because I think I just always expected, since it is a classic, to be a more traditional Rioja with lots of tannins and earth and old world style. Okay, so we're going to get to whether that wine tonight is this more old world style or, is it a different style? So we'll get to that in just a second. And let's see here. Karen, in fact, if you could hold up the wine so people can see which wine we're using tonight. It is, like I said, the Marques de Caceres, and if you get it real nice and close, you see under Marques de Caceres, you're going to see the word Crianza. And like I said, we've got the 2007. And this wine, like I said, you can get in a lot of places, but don't let that fool you. This is a really good quality wine. And it's not only a monumental wine. I mean, I know that's a big statement to make. It's not only a monumental wine, but it comes from a monumental region, which is Rioja. So let's literally put Rioja on the map tonight. We've got our great map from Vinos de España, a great resource for checking out more information about Spanish wines. And for all of those of you who were with us last week, I'm gonna be expecting a lot from you. And in fact, I want to know what makes Spain so geographically unique when we look at the old world. Let's see if anyone remembers anything from what we talked about last week. And but what we want to look at is, where's Rioja on this map? Okay, here comes our fun green arrow. There's Rioja. And in fact, Rioja is surrounded by mountains, and it has a lot of rivers going through it. So the name of the region comes from Rio Hoja, because there's a river called Hoja. So you can see off to the right there, Rioja is actually Rio, which is the Spanish word for river, followed by Hoja. And that's where we get the name of the word Rioja.
So did anyone, was anyone listening last week?
Yeah, Vinconomus was. He said altitude.
Great job, Vinconomus. Exactly. Spain has a great amount of altitude, and what it does is it allows us to get some freshness and acid on our wines that would otherwise be really ripe at the southerly latitude line. So great. And this Rioja region is no exception. As I alluded to before, it is surrounded by mountains. So you have the Pyrenees, and then I think it's the Sierra de Cantabria is the, I think that's it. I'm pulling that out of my back of the file case in the back of my head there. So if I'm wrong, hey, chime in. The beauty of live wine classes here. So exactly. Now, why is this wine region so monumental? Well, first of all, they've been making wine for over 2,000 years. And, well, in reference to Spain, that's actually not very monumental. Most regions have been making wine for over a couple thousand years. In fact, last week we talked about Rioja, which has also been making wine for over 2,000 years. So what else? What else does this region have that makes it unique? Well, this is actually the region. This is a little piece of interesting trivia. This is actually the region that was the first evidence of the written Spanish language. In 1300, some monk wrote in Spanish, and that's the only evidence they have of the beginnings of the Spanish language. So it's like, well, that has nothing to do with wine, but aha, it has a lot to do with wine. And what it has to do with wine is that the people who could read and write in the 1300s tend to be the church, right? And what do the church like to do? Well, they don't like to drink. I don't want to get in trouble for that one. But they do have mass, which requires wine. And so in other regions of the world, you're going to see wherever there are monastic or monk populations, you're going to find a really strong wine history. Monastic because it's Catholic and because they can read and write. But you're going to have that strong tradition of wine because they not only needed the wine, but they could document the wine. And that is so important to improving year after year. You've got to know which each harvest, which each season brings you so that the next time those challenges are presented, you know what to do with it. So that's the first thing. We've got a long history of winemaking in Rioja. Now, the second thing that Rioja has going on is it's a land of kings and riches and all kinds of prosperous communities. And that, in fact, Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, is still the case now. When you look in northern Spain and in northeastern Spain, so Catalonia or in the north of Spain there, it's the most prosperous, the most industrious of the Spanish nations. And whenever you have wealth and winemaking regions, you're going to see quality there as well because they're going to be wanting better and better wine, and they can afford to do what is needed to make better wine. And now one more thing that makes this region, has created this monumental region for the Spanish country, is that we have to look where it's located. So if you look where it's located with regards to other countries, it's right in the north. Now last week we talked about to the south of Spain is Africa. But to the north, does anyone know what is just to the north? Let us know what you, if you know that. And it's important because the country just to the north is or was the leader in wine production, definitely throughout the course of history. Now, some may argue others have taken the lead in present day, but definitely I see Emily, I see Weaver and Nancy, all saying France, right? So just to the north is France, and MRM CPS also said France. Good job, guys. So yeah, just to the north is France, and that proximity to France was really important. It allowed them to learn the technology, the advancements in winemaking before the rest of Spain. And so Rioja has always been a leader in winemaking in Spain. Okay, so now we come to the topic of today's WineCast, which is Spanish labeling terms. And there's a lot of them, but we're going to focus on 3. And if you take a look at the label here, you'll see up there, there we go, nice reflection, is Crianza. So Crianza is an indication of age to the consumer. And what we want to understand is where this fits in with other aging terms on labels. So I'm actually going to throw out that first wine IQ, which is, I haven't given you the answer yet, so it might be tough, but which of the following is the correct order if listed from shortest to longest aging requirements, okay? Is it A, Crianza Joven Reserva, B, Reserva Gran Reserva Crianza, C, Crianza Reserva Gran Reserva, or D, Roble Gran Roble Crianza? Okay, so take a look at that, see what you think. And as you're thinking about that, let me just tell you a little bit about this aging system, because it is a very unique system when compared to other countries. Other countries have aging terms, they have controlled aging terms, but there is no other country in the world, including in Europe, where the aging requirements and control is so tightly controlled by a certain country. Spain is unique in that sense. And why? Why is that? Why is that come into being that Spain has such a interesting perspective on labeling terms for aging? Well, let's go back in time a little bit. We have already done a little history lesson, but I've got some more for you. Back in the 1850s, there were two landowners in Rioja who traveled not very far to the north to Bordeaux in France. So Rioja, I've taken a train from Bordeaux down to Rioja. I think it was 4 or 5 hours. It's really not that far. And so two landowners from Rioja went up there. They saw what the French were doing, especially Bordeaux, which is known for being at the forefront of wine technology throughout history. And they came back to Rioja and said, hey guys, everyone in Bordeaux, they're making these great wines, and what they're doing is they're using these small barrels. They call barriques. They're real small barrels, and they're putting wine into the barrels. Okay, so when they first came back, everyone was like, you're nuts. What are you talking about? We're not going to do that. Well, as soon as the other landowners started to see what these two landowners were doing and the way the wine tasted, and then probably most importantly, the money that these landowners were getting for their wine, well, then everyone started to follow suit within Rioja, and then later within the whole country of Spain. So what you find is that Rioja is the first to use these barrels and the first to place an emphasis on the idea of aging. So let's get back to Wine IQ 1. See if anyone came in with the right answer, Karen. What are we seeing?
Yep, we're seeing a few C's.
Okay, so C's, great. So, exactly. If we were to order the aging terms on Spanish wine labels from shortest, and I should say minimum, shortest to longest aging requirements, we would go Crianza, Reserva, and Gran Reserva. So let's take a quick look at what these terms are and what they mean. So here they are again. We've got Crianza, Reserva, and Gran Reserva, and this is in our progressively increasing amount of age requirements. And let's take a look at what those age requirements are. So Crianza is countrywide, the minimum is 2 years. Now that's the minimum. A lot of producers will go above and beyond the minimum. Reserva is a minimum of 3 years, and Gran Reserva is a minimum of 5 years. Now if we look at when you break those time requirements down, what do they really mean? So when it says Crianza, a minimum of 2 years, it's not saying that the whole 2 years has to be in oak. For the country of Spain, Crianza, the minimum is going to be a minimum of 2 years aging, which 6 months of that has to be in oak. And down the line. So Reserva is a minimum of 3 years, but 12 months, a minimum of 12 months has to be in oak barrels. And Gran Reserva, a minimum of 5 years total, with 36 months or 3 years aged in oak. Now, what you see here is the concept that after a wine is aged in oak, it's not always at its peak for drinking. So the concept is, okay, you have to age your wine in oak for 6 months. But after that 6 months, you know what, it might need another year and a half to really mellow out and be at its peak. And what's happening here is that the producer, the winery, is actually holding on to that wine for you and releasing it upon its peak or when they think it's ready. And that's a very expensive process to do, which is one of the reasons why we're starting to see some Spanish winemakers pull away from this system of labeling. And I mean, if you can imagine 5 years of holding on to your goods that you need to sell, that is a lot of your inventory is tied up in aging. Now, what's interesting is if we look at Rioja specifically, you're going to see higher minimums. So let me flip back again so you can see the difference here. This is for Spain. Crianza is a minimum of 2 years with 6 months in oak. Now, for Rioja, this is for Rioja, Crianza is a minimum of 2 years, but with 12 months in oak. And that's the major difference. Apart from that, everything is about the same. But what you find is that Rioja is saying, you know what? We are going to make our minimum higher because we have been the leader in winemaking throughout history in Spain, and we want to keep it that way. So we are going to have higher minimums to guarantee a higher quality of wine. Now, it makes sense because Rioja was the first, let's see if we've got it on here, yep, first to be classified as the Denominación de Origen Calificada, which is the highest classification in Spain. There's only 3 that have that DOC, okay, and Rioja is one of them, and they were the first. The other one is the Priorat, and the third is Ribera del Duero. Now, if there's another one, I think that was in 2008, so I think we're good. But if there's another one out there, let me know, guys. But I don't think so. Spain, I keep a pretty good pulse on. But hey, I'm not saying I'm never wrong. Okay, so what we've got is these different aging terms, and why? Why do we need these aging terms? Well, it makes a big difference in the flavor you can expect from the wine. So the younger the wine is, the Crianza, you're going to get more fruit. You're going to get more young oak. So real strong, especially vanilla flavors traditionally in Rioja. And that comes from American oak. That's starting to change. We're seeing a little bit more French oak, which is a little bit more of a subtle spice. But as we go down the line to Gran Reserva, we start to see more of dried fruit and leather and these incense spices. So the flavor profile changes, and then also the price changes dramatically. In theory, you're only going to find Reservas and Gran Reservas in the best years, and so it's already a higher quality grape. And then it's aged for a long time, so that costs money, and that money is later passed on to you, okay? So, I see Jacqueline Stewart is on, and she just confirmed that's all of them. Thanks, Jacqueline. Jacqueline is my super sommelier, so I'm glad to see you joined us tonight. You can be my fact checker. All right, so let's go ahead and get down to business here. Let's try this wine, and no matter what you've got out there, just sip away, have some fun with this. And what we want to start off with is, of course, the appearance. I want you to take a look at the wine, and this is important, especially today. Sometimes we kind of pass over this part of the observation because it doesn't really tell us much about the wine, but today it is important. Now, this camera doesn't really give it justice, but what we're looking for here is the change in color as it goes from a Crianza to a Reserva to a Gran Reserva. Now we have a Crianza, which is on the young side, so we would expect more of a ruby, maybe a garnet color on this. As we would go to Reserva and Gran Reserva, we would start to see the wine brown, especially on the rim here. We'd start to see that first, and then eventually throughout, okay? So we would go from to a garnet and this almost tawny color after a while. Now, another thing is that you'll see a loss of color fairly easily and early. And that's because the grapes that are used here are Garnacha and, first Tempranillo. Actually, I've got that for you guys. Tempranillo, which is 85% in this blend, with Garnacha and Graciano making up the remaining 15%. Now, Emily, who's on the chat roll too, I've seen her there, she wrote a great article that's on our homepage called The Greatness of Rioja. And she talks a little bit about how Tempranillo and Garnacha have thinner skins and a softer texture, which in those thinner skins are going to create that loss of color a little quicker than, say, a thicker skin grapes like Cabernet or Shiraz or Syrah. Okay, so go ahead and check that article out if you're interested in learning more about Rioja. She wrote a great article. Now let's move on to the nose. Go ahead and give it a swirl and a smell. And of course, this brings us to wine IQ number 2, which is, I love this one. I love to hear what you guys are smelling. And, regardless of the wine that you are trying, tell us what you're smelling. We'd love to know. So what we're going to be looking here for is this representative of a Crianza, which is younger, so we would tend to find more fruit, or is it more like a Reserva or Gran Reserva, which has more age on it, so we would see more things like dried fruit and incense spice and leather and earthy notes on it as well. So go ahead and give that a smell. This is also a great time to talk about why this wine is monumental. I'm a victim of this too. I often overlook this wine because it's everywhere. I see it at good wine stores to grocery stores to gas stations. Okay, it really has made the rounds. And it's good to get back to it because it has an interesting history. The founder, his name was Enrique Forner, and he is the maverick that changed the style of modern winemaking in Spain. He, again, went just slightly north to Bordeaux and checked out what they were doing there. And in Bordeaux, what they were doing was using stainless steel and temperature control. And what that did was preserve fruit. If you remember last week, we talked about how the whites from Rioja were oxidized for so long until we got stainless steel and temperature control. So Enrique, he brought that to Rioja, that concept, and he was the first to really create this modern Rioja wine style, which is more heavy and focused on fruit and less so on things like spice, and he even used less oak treatment. He would prefer to use the minimum oak treatment or the time in oak than what other people were doing at the time. So he took away that oak, he took away the oxidation process and preserved the fruit. So I want to know, are you guys getting that on this wine? What are people chiming in with?
Well, we've got various answers. Lots of people are saying definitely fruit with maybe some spice and earth undertones, but then we've also got earthy with black cherry undertones. MRM CPS, who have the Pedro Martinez Alessanco, says some earth and spice is what she's getting.
And I will agree with that. The Pedro Alessanco, I remember, it was a little bit more what we call rustic. So getting that earth on it is quite, I would definitely expect that on that. This one, I definitely see some of this earth and black cherry. For this one, I'm getting a lot of red fruit though too, and lots of fruit at that, which I think is definitely representative of what this wine is. In fact, when Karen and I were talking about this wine before we started, Karen was saying, I kind of expected it to be more old world because it is a Rioja wine, and you didn't expect it to be so fruity. And it just is in line with why this particular wine has changed. It did change the scene for modern winemaking in Rioja. Now what you've seen is a split. You've seen some people who've gone more in the fruity direction to maintain the fruit, use newer oak, smaller barriques, and are looking for more of a fresh, clean style, whereas others have remained true to more, historical winemaking techniques. That's all relative, by the way. Historical, what is historical? Is it 50 years ago, 100? Okay, don't get me going. So anyways, but which is more of an oxidized, they call it rancio style. So that's what we're seeing. I can see definitely some dark. I see dark fruit coming in. Economist is saying dark fruit and black cherries, some tobacco and chocolate. And what's interesting is this wine's opening. I'm getting a little bit more of those deeper, the chocolate flavor. When I first opened it, I got more of the aromatic and volatile aromas. I got a little bit of a floral note on it, which I thought was really pretty. I love it when my wines are pretty, fruity and pretty. Okay, so great comments, guys. Let's go on and move on to what we think on the palate, the fun part. So everyone, go ahead and drink away. I'm gonna sneak in a little sip here too. And I want you guys to think about the fruit again, because that's something we really are talking about a lot. Also the tannin. And let's talk about the body, perhaps. Those are some things that you can throw out there. And I want you to tell us what you think about the wine. Now, while you're doing that, let me just, again, touch upon how a Crianza would be different than a Reserva and a Gran Reserva. So Crianza, again, fruit. We get a lot of fruit on the palate. We might get a little oak on it because it's just recently released and spent anywhere from 6 months to a year in oak barrels, maybe, okay? But as we go from Crianza to Gran Reserva, we're going to start to see less fruit and more of a dried fruit note and more of a spice and an earth and leather and those tertiary aromas and flavors. Also, I want to talk about tannin. In its youth, now, has anyone mentioned tannin on this wine?
No, not yet.
Okay, the tannin's quite low on this wine, and that's quite typical. Some Tempraníos can produce some structure, but you're really not going to find a whole lot of wines from Rioja with high tannin. You're going to see anywhere from medium minus to medium tannins, I think, on it. And this one is a very soft wine. Garnacha, also a big contributor to Rioja wines, not known for being high in tannin. Tempranillo can do it from Rioja Alta, okay, from a certain region within Rioja or Rioja Alavesa as well, but not all of them are going to have this tannin on it. But the Reserva and Gran Reservas are going to be better known for having tannin early in its life because that's what you need to age it. And so as we go from Crianza to Gran Reserva, we're going to start to see more tannin. And what we're going to see is a texture that starts to become real silky. And that's just a factor of aging wine, is you start to get more of this silky, smooth, satiny sometimes texture. And then finally, quality. As we go from Crianza to Gran Reserva, the quality is going to get better. So we should expect more complexity, more concentration, more intensity, all those things that we look for in a quality wine. So anyone coming in on the chat roll, Karen?
Yeah, everyone's definitely agreeing that the tannins are soft or low, pretty mild, and the fruit is definitely coming forward on the palate.
Great.
Someone mentioned slightly acidic. I think I agree. It's got a really nice acid to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. I think it's got. It's interesting because I really see this wine as being similar to a Côte d'Aron, especially this young Rioja, in that the tannins are on the low side. You get some red fruit, some black fruit. The only thing is different is that the alcohol is a little bit more mild than, say, a Côte d'Aron. But this is a really easygoing wine, especially this producer, which is why we find it in a lot of places. It's easy to drink. It goes down easy. It's fruity, low tannin. Has a little bit of an acid. I wouldn't say high on the acid, but it's there. Again, Riojas are not known for having high acid. If you're dealing with maybe a Gran Reserva, it might have a little bit more acid just because you need that to age it. But great comments, guys. I definitely think you guys are all on the right track here. So I want to know what you guys think of the wine. So go ahead and tell us what you think. Anything from dump it to save it. And I also want you to tell me what you think of food pairings. Poor Karen over here has no pork, and so she needs some ideas for what to drink after we're done here, because we're just about at the end. And also, we always talk about food and wine pairings, but if you're a musician or you like music, Brian O'Keefe, one of our contributors, did a fantastic article on pairing a Gran Reserva with music. So it's on our homepage under Wine Association Games. So check that out, because if you like music, you're going to like this article that he wrote. So what are some people saying, Karen?
Emily says, buy it pork.
Buy it pork. Oh, pork. Emily's rubbing in. You're rubbing in the Karen has no pork. Okay. Anyone else?
No, but Bencanis did have a comment. He was wondering what your opinion was, because the label says to open the wine an hour before serving, if you agree with that or not.
Not really. This wine,
you can wait an hour after
yes,
opening it.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? I mean, you don't have to, but it's fine if you do. In fact, certain wines definitely with time are going to get better. And everyone has a different opinion about it. I because I like to educate and learn and know and observe things, I like to see the evolution of a wine. It takes a little bit more patience because you do need to have it open for an hour. So I'd love to come back to this in 2 hours, 3 hours from now, if it lasts that long, and see where it goes. And maybe Jeff, I'd have a different answer for you. But quite honestly, my first impression is that this is a really simple wine. It's about $15. I'm sure it's going to evolve somewhat. I just don't think it's going to evolve a lot. That's what we usually pay for, is this evolution in the glass. So if I might eat my words, or drink my words in this case, but I really don't think you have to, but you can. I don't think it's going to go bad in an hour because I'm not going to get into it. Okay, so great question though. I did not see that on the back. Shows you, I got to read my back of the bottle literature more. Any other questions, Karen?
Well, MRM CPS is drinking with the Gran Queso cheese.
Ooh, you're living good, girl. I don't know, girl. I'm trying to remember who MRM CPS is, but definitely great cheeses. Karen, you have got any suggestions for food and wine pairings?
I think Mediterranean food would go perfectly with olives, chorizo, even some tomato because it does have a little bit of acid, paella.
Mm-hmm.
If you stay within that region, I think you're gonna do well, and I think you could even go well with seafood.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you could even take this as far as saying, for $15, a pizza night. It could go with white meat though too. The tannins are low enough. You could maybe even get away with a meaty fish. The tannins, I think, are mild enough on this wine, and this is a fruity enough wine, that you could do some savory fish preparation, some herbs like rosemaries or that kind of stuff, perhaps. I don't know. Let's see. Anyone else? Empanadas. All right, Jacqueline. Yeah, you could have chicken.
By the way, MRM CPS is a guy.
Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to call you a girl. Okay, you guys, thank you, guy here. Okay, and I think it's actually Guy. I think that's, maybe not. Okay. Okay, guys. Well, let's see. One last comment I just want to make about Rioja, because it's a region that definitely is near and dear to my heart because I've spent some time there, as Karen has. But also, I think it's a fantastic region to learn about the wines that age and what they do, and at a price you just can't beat. To have a wine that's aged 2 years under $20, or 3 years under $30, or 5 years under $40 is difficult to find in the rest of the world. So this is a region to go to if you're really interested to see what happens to wine as they age, what direction do they go. This is a great region to check out. So that's my 2 cents on Rioja. You'll hear more, I'm sure, in the future. But I would say buy it. I definitely enjoy this wine. I would buy it again. There's so many out there. It's difficult to say I'd stock it. And actually, I don't. The Pedro Alessanco, I think, I don't know if it's still as cheap as it was, but there are some really inexpensive Riojas as well. So there we go. So I think that's it. If we have nothing else going on the chat roll, Karen, we are going to, with that, we're going to sign off for tonight. If you liked what you saw, definitely invite your friends over and share that bottle. I know that's tough to do sometimes, but definitely tell your friends about what we're doing. We definitely want to get more and more people on. I'm loving seeing everyone here on the chat roll, and I hope you guys come back next week. We're going to be doing cool climate grapes, and we're going to be focusing on a Riesling from Washington. So we'll talk about which grapes do better in cool climates. And that's all for tonight. So thanks for joining us. I'm Jessica Bell from My Wine School, where it is wine your way.